Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have the first episode of the Game Week preview series that I run every single game week here on this channel, where I take a detailed look at your questions and dilemmas ahead of the upcoming game week. These videos take a while to put together because I go into a lot of detail and do a lot of research, so if you do appreciate that, please smash the like button. Let's aim for 2,000 likes on this video and make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So in this video, we are going to take a look at a ton of stuff, as we always do in these Game Week preview videos, including projected points, Bruno versus Rashford, Joao Pedro, Foden, the best £6.5 million midfielders. And at the end of the video, I even have 2 drafts as well. So do stick around for the entire thing because I'll build a narrative throughout and I'll discuss how different things link together. But if you are in a rush and you want to look at a specific point, I will have all of the timestamps down below, again, as I always do in these videos, so that you can skip to a specific section that you need the information for. I thought a really nice way to start this video would be to look at the projected points according to Fantasy Football Hub for game weeks 1 to 5. I won't keep banging on about Fantasy Football Hub during this video, but all of the stats that I get throughout the season, all of the My Team ratings as well, all come from Fantasy Football Hub. If you would like to sign up during pre-season, you get 50% off using the link in the description. It's worth doing in pre-season because you get the biggest discount. It also supports me as well, and you also get access to a lot of statistics that I genuinely do believe will help you throughout the season. So as I said, I just thought a nice way to start this would be to look at the projected points over the opening 5 game weeks to give us a bit of an idea about which players the algorithm over at Fantasy Football Hub think we should be targeting. It's absolutely no surprise that the top 3 players are Haaland, Kane and Salah. They are the 3 big premiums that you can own, and you would expect them to come out top of projected points. Of course, Haaland is in a league of his own. We don't really need to discuss him much. It's interesting that Kane is projected to get more points than Salah. The first 2 aren't ideal for Spurs, but game weeks 3, 4 and 5, the fixtures are really nice for Spurs. I think Liverpool have a little bit more of a mixed bag in their opening fixtures. They've also got quite a few away fixtures over the first 6 to 8. So I would probably agree that if we're just looking at, let's ignore captaincy completely. Let's just say raw points, who is going to score more points between Kane and Salah. Assuming Kane stays, of course, I would expect that to be Kane. The reason I would maybe edge back towards Salah is in game week 2, both Kane and Haaland have tricky fixtures against Manchester United and Newcastle, whereas Salah's got Bournemouth at home. The value in a premium asset is in captaincy. I don't think it's really worth having a premium option if you're not going to at least consider captaining them in some weeks, because I think it's just better to spread the funds if you're going to captain Haaland every week. But if you are willing to go against Haaland, Salah's probably the better play for that game week 2 fixture. I'd love to know down below in the comments, do you currently own either Kane or Salah? But they, of course, are in 2nd and 3rd. Interestingly, the Hub algorithm really does favour Rashford and Fernandes. So as you can see, in 4th and 5th are the 2 Manchester United midfielders, well above some of the other Arsenal midfielders that are very, very popular in our drafts. Rashford projected to come out slightly on top, despite his expected minutes being lower, just because he's a greater goal threat. He is projected to get slightly more points. So this would suggest that you probably should have 1 Man United midfielder in your team, and I would concur with that. I do think the double up is viable. In my current draft, I've got both Rashford and Fernandes. By the way, my draft will be live on Thursday on this channel, so if you want to see my final team selection, make sure to subscribe. But I have both Rashford and Fernandes at the moment. I think they're excellent options. Some other interesting stuff here. I'm not going to go through every player in loads of details, but it's interesting to see that Ødegaard is quite a bit above Martinelli, well, 2 points, which is quite a reasonable amount over a 5-game-week spell. So Ødegaard is favoured, and again, in a similar way to how I saw Fernandes, his expected minutes are quite high. Ødegaard's expected minutes are quite high. And as a result, even though Martinelli's got slightly better data, Ødegaard is still expected to come out on top. So I don't mind a punt on Ødegaard. I know he's actually about 20% owned in FPL, but I've not seen him in a lot of drafts. So Ødegaard could be interesting. Wilson and Son, you can see, make up 2 of the top 10 there. They aren't really in many drafts. I've not seen much of Wilson. I've not seen much of Son. Spurs are creating a lot of opportunities in pre-season. I know the opposition aren't particularly good, but Son, Kane, Maddison, maybe even a Kulusevski, I think they will score goals for Spurs this season, assuming that Kane stays. Because Postecoglou sets up in a very, very attacking manner, and I feel like he will go for goals this season in a way to what we've not seen in the past with Spurs. I think it will be reminiscent of what we saw with Pochettino at Spurs under Postecoglou. So I do like Son. Wilson, the fixtures just aren't there for me, but I can understand why his projected points are so high in the algorithm. Maddison is also in there at 25 points. I would probably say I prefer Maddison to Son. I would rather save 1.5 million. And I actually think in pre-season, what we've seen is Maddison's almost playing as like a second striker or an advanced number 10. And he's supporting Kane. And at some points going beyond Kane as well. So I really do like Maddison as a pick. Obviously, Watkins and Mbeumo are very, very popular in our drafts too. Matoma is slightly below Mbeumo, but he's still got really good projected points. And with Mbeumo's expected minutes maybe dropping, it may well be that Matoma takes over. Some players that or here towards the back end that aren't necessarily as popular in some teams is Raheem Sterling at 23.8, March at 23.82, and we've also got Trent in there at 23.7. Despite him not being in many teams at the moment, he could still do really well over the opening game weeks. I would just note that Nkunku is now confirmed to be out for at least 2 months by quite a few different sources. I've made this graphic before and the algorithm hasn't updated with that new information, but as soon as that updates, Nkunku will drop out of this list and someone else will sneak in. I'm not going to lie, I was quite surprised. We got a lot of questions, as you would imagine, around the £6.5 million midfielders, and I was ready to answer this because I've thought about it a lot. I didn't realise there were 10 £6.5 million midfielders, some that I've not even considered, some that have maybe crossed my mind, but there are quite a few, and I do think this is a good price point to have in your teams, or at the very least, because I've had quite a few drafts where I don't have a 6.5, have someone like a Phil Foden or a Maddison, where you would maybe be happy dropping them to a 6.5 if you need to, or at least have like 5 midfielders so that you've got that flexibility. I think this is going to be a price point that is very valuable throughout the season. Whilst there are 10 options, I would say only 5 or 6 have really crossed my mind. I'll rule out the ones that I am not currently considering. Bernardo Silva is a player that I'm not currently considering. His data absolutely stinks, and it has done ever since he's been in the Premier League. Bernardo Silva, even when he went on that really good run, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was in the 2021 season. It might have been the 21-22 season. Bernardo Silva went on an insane run where he was scoring game after game after game. His data has never been good, even in that spell here. You can see a 0.28 non-penalty expected goal involvement. For me, Bernardo Silva will not be an option. He doesn't get as many minutes as you would maybe expect. You can see 64 minutes per game on average last season, and really, really poor data. So Bernardo's not an option for me. I've not really considered either of the Newcastle assets in Almiron or Barnes. The simple reason for that is Almiron's data, again, has never been particularly good. Yes, he went on a hot streak last season, but I'm not expecting that to happen regularly. And also, the fixtures just aren't there. So even if they had excellent data, I would rather pick a player that has similarly good data, but much better fixtures. I do think one of, if not both, Almiron and Barnes at points this season will be worthwhile picking. But for now, I'm not interested. And also, we just don't know how they're going to set up. They could set up with Isak on the left, and all of a sudden, Harvey Barnes is a bit of a rotation risk. So I'd like to see how they set up. I'd like them to get through the difficult fixtures, and then I'll consider them there. Maybe I've considered most of the others. I would say actually Pascal Gross hasn't really crossed my mind. I think especially now with Joao Pedro taking penalties, I just don't think there's anything now in Gross's locker. His data's not terrible, but the penalties was the real thing where you said, actually, maybe it's worth it. Even if he's playing a defensive role, he's still relatively creative, whether that be from right back or defensive midfield, and he's on penalties. But take away the penalties, I think most of the other Brighton attackers are slightly better for me, despite, as you can see here, Gross probably being the most nailed £6.5 million midfielder. But for me, he's just not really crossed my mind. Mudryk has crossed my mind, but I'm not going to start the season with him, so I'll move on to him next. I wouldn't mind having him at some point later. And if you watch my predictions video, if you've not yet seen that, by the way, I released that a few days ago, where I made some Premier League predictions. I actually predicted Mudryk to be the surprise star in FPL this season. I think at some point, both Mudryk and Sterling will be in our FPL teams, or we'll have one of them, and we'll have that debate who to go for. I think he's an exceptionally talented footballer. He looks like he's excelling in pre-season under Pochettino, and I feel like he could be a really nice asset at 6.5, but I've not really considered starting the season with him, despite the fact that the fixtures aren't bad for Chelsea. Which brings us on to the ones that I have considered. You can see that the ones with a little star next to their name are my top 4, which means in about 5th place, I would probably put Solly March. He's had some injury fitness concerns in pre-season, but he did get 90 minutes in their most recent game for Brighton. So it could be that Solly March is fit. I just think there is so much rotation in that Brighton lineup. And I think especially on the right this season, there'll be even more competition. Brighton are also looking at making even more additions to their starting 11 in the attack. I just feel like for me, the Brighton assets aren't as good as they were just due to Europe and increased competition in the attacking positions. So for me, I do really like Solly March's data. You can see he's got the best non-penalty expected goal involvement here. I'm just not sure how strong his minutes will be this season. And as a result, I'm probably not considering him. And for that reason, I would arguably put Matoma in 4th at the moment. I know his data was relatively strong last season, but you can see even last season, when they had less competition and they didn't have Europe, he only averaged 70 minutes per game. I would expect that to stay around the same, if not drop a little bit. And I just don't think it's worth picking a player when there are so many other players around that price point that I think are more nailed with similar data. And in some cases, better fixtures. I'm just not sure that I want to have Matoma in my team. What I would say around Matoma is I think he's fine for the opening 3. I would definitely expect him to start the opening 3 games. And that's when Brighton's fixtures are at their best. And then maybe you move him on after that. But if you're looking for a slightly longer term option, I just don't think Matoma is going to be it. Personally, in my opinion, this season. We'll have to wait and see, though. Which means in 3rd, I would probably go for Diaby. I think the Diaby looks like he's playing almost as a second striker, sometimes literally playing alongside Ollie Watkins and making runs in behind Watkins as well. I think the Diaby will be excellent value this season. I expect Aston Villa to finish comfortably in the top 8, potentially even push towards the top 5 for Champions League football. So I really like Diaby, and I would expect him to get decent minutes for Aston Villa too. Maybe not start every single game, and he might get a few early subs, but I expect him to be nailed enough to at least have him in your team. I would expect him to get a similar amount of minutes per game to the likes of Matoma, maybe slightly more, depending on how much Unai Emery likes him in that team. So I really do like Diaby, which means in first and second, I have Eze and Mbeumo. Looking at the data firstly, Eze's data last season wasn't fantastic. You can see here, he's got the same data as Mudryk, lower than Almiron and Pascal Gross. It's one of the worst on this list, but it did improve slightly under Hodgson, and I think it will continue to improve as well. I think Zaha not being in the team anymore, I think will actually benefit Eze. I think he'll be slightly more attacking. I think he'll be slightly more talismanic as well. And I think we'll see an increase in his goal threat. He is on penalties as well. So non-penalty expected goal involvement is very good, but you also have the addition of penalties. So I'm not too worried necessarily at that. And I also think that 69 minutes per 90 for Eze, or per game last season for Eze, it will actually be high because since Hodgson came in, Eze played every single minute available. I think it was around game week 29 he came in, and he played something like 10 or 11 games in a row and saw every single minute on the pitch. So I think Eze is completely nailed under Hodgson, and I think he'll do very, very well this season. So I'm not too concerned about the data there. But Mbeumo's data was definitely better, and Mbeumo for 2 seasons in a row now has had very, very strong data in the Premier League. So if he can slightly improve his conversion, and Mbeumo's data is looking really, really promising. And then the reason that I like both Eze and Mbeumo, and I hinted to it a second ago, is they're both on a lot of set pieces and they're both on penalties too. We would expect Mbeumo to continue to be on pens. Eze, I'm almost certain, will be. We've also seen in pre-season, Eze has taken corners and free kicks, and at points last season, Mbeumo was on all corners too. He took something like 60 or 70 set pieces for Brentford, so he's taken a hell of a lot of set pieces. He's in a really, really attacking Brentford team. And Eze, whilst Crystal Palace aren't the most attacking outfit, I think the fact that he is on absolutely everything for them, he's going to be so talismanic. If Crystal Palace get attacking returns, which they are going to, you would expect Eze to be involved. So I think for me at the moment, if I was to summarise all of that, this is just my opinion. Please pick the midfielder that you think will do the best. If he's fit for game week 1, Mbeumo, Eze, Matoma and Diaby sort of joint third, and then maybe March, Mudryk after that. But I'm not really interested in those. To be honest, but for me, it's between Mbeumo and Eze. And if I'm going to go for 2, it would be those 2. Of course, if Mbeumo is out, then we can start considering the likes of Matoma and Diaby. I would love to know down below in the comments, who do you think are the best 3 £6.5 million midfielders ranked? Just do 1, 2, 3, rank them down below. I have a feeling you guys will like Matoma slightly more than I do. I don't dislike him. I just slightly prefer Eze and Mbeumo. So we did discuss them a little bit at the start of the video, but there were quite a few questions around Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, and quite a few people asking if you could only have one, who would it be? As you can see by the kit that I'm wearing right now, I am a Manchester United fan myself. I watch every single one of our games, and if I don't, I'll record it and go back and watch the full 90. I've seen pretty much every minute of us across the past few seasons. It doesn't make it any easier for me. At the moment, I'm really struggling. And I suppose most people would say, we'll just have them both. And in my latest draft, I do have them both. But I think with the fact that Kane looks ever more likely that he'll be staying, and even if he doesn't, it looks like he'll be at least there for game week 1. So you could start the season with him and just hope that he stays. And also, Salah's looking pretty decent in pre-season. Looks more of an assist threat, but he's also picking up goals too. I don't think realistically you can get Rashford, Fernandes, one of Salah or Kane and Haaland, and also have a really balanced squad outside that with the likes of a Saka, maybe Gabriel Estepinian. It's impossible to do. So really, when you get Salah or Kane in, you normally have to lose one of the Manchester United midfielders. I think I'll try and simplify this because you could go into this in so much detail. Rashford is the greater goal threat. Bruno Fernandes is the greater assist threat. If you just look down on this list here where it says non-penalty expected goal involvement, you can see Rashford last season at 0.59, Bruno at 0.23. And then when you move on to an expected assist, it's almost the complete mirror of the expected goals. Rashford at 0.23 expected assist, and then Fernandes up at 0.49 expected assist. So their non-penalty expected goal involvement isn't far off of each other. And when you take into account minutes, i.e. Rashford will play slightly less minutes than Bruno, it is almost identical per game. Their non-penalty expected goal involvement per game is almost exactly the same. The reason that I think, as a result, I would say I prefer Rashford from an FPL perspective is because he is a greater goal threat. Midfielders get extra points for goals, and also you are more likely to pick up bonus points if you score versus assist. I know Bruno Fernandes is an excellent option, and he'll still pick up bonus points as well. I just think that goal threat from Marcus Rashford makes him a slightly better option. But you do need to take into account, as you can see by the touch maps, Rashford doesn't take any set pieces. Bruno takes a hell of a lot of corners, and I think despite Mason Mount coming in, he'll still take them. He takes some free kicks, and he should still be on most penalties as well. So these are extra things that are an advantage for Bruno. The other thing that I would say is obviously the introduction of Mason Mount is going to affect the way that we set up. In most games, and I don't think it'll be in every game, I think in most games, we're going to play with 2 number 8s this season, which means probably it'll be Bruno Fernandes on the right and Mason Mount on the left. And I think what we'll see is when Mount goes forward, Fernandes will sit deeper, and when Fernandes goes forward, Mount will sit a little bit deeper. But most of the time, they'll push up the pitch together. In pre-season, from what we've seen thus far, it looks like Bruno Fernandes is slightly deeper than Mason Mount. I'm not talking Bruno's playing as a CDM, but most of the time it's Mason Mount that's pushing up towards the striker, which at the moment tends to be Marcus Rashford. And Bruno's just playing a little bit deeper, progressing the ball and making some long passes as well. He's an incredibly talented footballer. He can still get assists from there, and he will still score goals as well. But that's maybe something else to push you towards Marcus Rashford. So at the moment, my answer is to own both. If you can't own both, or you want to make a decision to just own one, I would still lean Marcus Rashford despite the extra 0.5, just because I think he's a greater goal threat. And I think until Haaland is settled into the starting 11, we are very reliant on Marcus Rashford to score goals. And I think he'll be very talismanic for us. Once Haaland comes in and Rashford goes to the left, I think what we'll probably see is a slight decrease in goal threat from Marcus Rashford and a slight increase in creativity. But that's something we'll have to wait and see. For the time being, if you were to ask me over the opening 5 who scores more points, I'd probably just about lean towards Marcus Rashford. Let me know down below in the comments, do you own Rashford, Bruno, neither, or both? I think both is probably quite popular at the moment. So we're going to move on to some other questions that you asked me over on Twitter about some specific players and options for Game Week 1. I just wanted to say at this point, if you're still watching at this point and you've not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, can I please ask you to subscribe? We are on the road to 80,000 subscribers before Game Week 1, and I would really appreciate the support. And like I said, I do this video every single game week, and I'll take you through the season and hopefully get you the best possible rank that you can. So with Foden, there's been so many questions. I've just given you 2 example questions that I got here. Is should we now consider Foden too big of an expected minutes risk to start with him? Do you expect Foden to start against Burnley in Game Week 1? The truth is I have absolutely no idea. And anyone that tries to pretend they do, you might have a bit of an inkling based on predictions from the past. But generally, we don't tend to know too much, and anything can happen with Pep. What I would say is the Community Shield doesn't necessarily affect my thinking too much. I haven't had Foden in any of my recent drafts. I don't think I want the headache going into Game Week 1. Something which is a mistake that I've made season upon season is just taking too many headaches and too many expected minutes risks into Game Week 1. I've gone into the past with like the likes of Foden, Chilwell, James, Darwin. Yes, they are high upside players, and if they all start and do well, you would probably be first in the world. But the likelihood of them all starting and doing well is quite low. You'll have other issues that crop up in the immediate few game weeks at the start of the season. You'll have other players that you haven't considered that start really well and you want to jump on. Adding to that with the likes of a Foden and a Darwin and other players like this, it just makes it more and more difficult to not take hits at the start of the season. Then you start to feel like you're falling behind as well because you're taking hits rather than allowing yourself to be aggressive with luxury-free transfers. So for me, I don't think now I want to have Foden in my team, but that isn't because of the Community Shield. The reason I say that, if you think about last season in the Champions League, the team that Pep tended to play in the Champions League was Bernardo Silva on the right, Grealish on the left, Haaland through the middle, and it was like Gundogan, KDB, Rodri. He didn't tend to play the likes of a Foden on the right. He likes Bernardo Silva's work rate. He does a lot of good defensive work. So I think against Arsenal, there was always a chance that Bernardo Silva was going to start on the right. And then some people were saying, well, yeah, but maybe we thought Foden would play through the middle. But I think he just preferred that balance of having Kovacic in there instead. Against teams such as Burnley, I would not be surprised to see Foden playing that number 8 role in midfield because they don't need to play as many defensive players, because they don't need to worry so much about defensive transitions, about being off the ball. And Foden, as Pep has said on a few occasions now, he is still learning that midfield role. But I think against teams such as Burnley, Foden will be absolutely fine. So if you were to ask me now, I do think Foden will start against Burnley. Not because he was rested in the Community Shield, just because I think this is the sort of game where Pep will put him in that midfield role. I don't think he'll play on the right as much as people think this season. I think Bernardo Silva will play a lot more on the right. I still don't think necessarily that Bernardo Silva is worth the money, but I think we'll see that a little bit more. So yeah, Foden's fine as an option. If you are willing to accept that, I would say in the opening 6 game weeks, I wouldn't be surprised to see Foden bench 2 or 3 times. I would expect you to get at least 3 starts. I think you'd be very unlucky not to. But you've got to think at 7.5 million, are you willing to risk only getting 3 to 4 starts? And even in those games, maybe not getting 90 minutes for Foden, when you can have someone like, if he's fit, and Burmo, Eze, Diaby at 6.5, going up to 7.5, you've got the likes of Maddison. At only 8, you've got Martinelli. Is it worth paying it for Foden? For me, I've decided it's probably not. And in some of my drafts, even if I've only got 4 midfielders, I'm then preferring someone like an Ollie Watkins to Foden. The data's pretty similar for them last season. Watkins might still be on penalties, and you know Watkins will be on the pitch for pretty much every minute. So I'm not trying to talk you out of Foden. I love Foden. I've had him in pretty much every single draft apart from the last few. I've kind of talked myself out of it just due to expected minutes. But I would love to know down below in the comments, do you think he'll start in game week 1? Are you going to own Foden? I'm probably going to leave it for now. So the next set of questions were around Liverpool players and questions around whether we should own their players and if it's risky going without them. And if it is, who is my favourite asset outside of Trent and Salah? I don't think it's overly risky going without them. We'll start with Trent. I think at 8 million, you need more clean sheets. And in pre-season, it doesn't look any more like they'll keep clean sheets in the Premier League this season. They look incredibly vulnerable. And on top of that, Trent's playing more like a number 6 role than a number 8 role. And I think because they are so defensively frail, I think he's pushing less and less up the pitch and playing more like a defensive midfielder. And I think he will get assists, and of course Liverpool will keep clean sheets, and I'm sure that Trent will be one of the top scoring defenders in FPL again this season. You need him to be comfortably the best defender. For 8 million, when you've got the likes of Martinelli, Watkins, Foden, Maddison, all of these players in and around that could quite conceivably outscore Trent, I just don't think for me I'm going to consider going for Trent. And Salah is the most expensive midfielder in the game. And as we've spoken about, it's very tricky to get him in without dropping the likes of a Rashford or a Bruno. So I don't think it's risky to go without those. And then when you look at the other 4 real options that you've got in Gakpo, Diaz, Jota and Darwin, they are minutes risk. We saw... I'm actually recording this the day of their final pre-season friendly. Jota, Gakpo, Diaz and Salah all started. So they started with 4 attackers. And let me tell you, if they do that in the Premier League, they are going to concede goals for fun. And it was actually Darwin was the only attacker out of all of those options there that started on the bench. Darwin was the one player about a week or 2 ago that I thought was going to be the most nailed attacker for them. It just doesn't look very likely. So for me, I'm just not considering any of them. If you are to consider a Liverpool attacker, I think there are 2 good options. I don't think, based on what we've seen from the last couple of pre-season friendlies, Darwin is not first choice. I don't see why he would be rested. It makes no sense. Darwin's not getting enough minutes for me, so Darwin is no longer an option. I think Diaz just isn't getting enough minutes either. I know he started recently, but I don't think he's going to be starting enough. I think for me is Gakpo or Jota. If you were to ask me, and I said this at the start of pre-season, I changed my mind and now I'm back on that. I think Gakpo is the most nailed attacker outside of Salah. If you were to predict who would get the most minutes, I think it's Gakpo. My issue is Gakpo played more like a midfield role in the game tonight. Not a complete midfielder, but dropped in a little bit deeper. And also his data last season was comfortably the worst out of all of the Liverpool attackers. So he's going to be playing a little bit deeper, potentially at points. His data's not as good. Yes, he'll get more minutes, but is it worth it? Potentially not. So I think my favourite asset would be Jota. But I don't know if he's going to get enough minutes. He will rotate with Gakpo. He will rotate with Darwin. He will rotate with Diaz as well. It's just going to be so difficult to try and predict their minutes. If they had outstanding fixtures and they had a really strong pre-season, I might be willing to take the risk. But the fixtures are average. Their pre-season was okay at points. It's just not going to be the one for me. So if I were to, it would be probably Salah. But if you can't afford Salah, Jota, let me know down below what you think of the Liverpool assets and if you have any in your team. So I'm going to do what YouTubers are often afraid to do, especially FPL YouTubers, and say, I don't know to this next comment. I have no idea, and I'm very torn on it myself. Again, I will be releasing my team selection on Thursday, so make sure you subscribe to see that. And I'll also be doing a deadline stream in the lead up to the deadline, so you will be able to see if I go into the season with Joao Pedro or not. I'm really not sure how to feel about him, because on paper, it looks fantastic and he looks like he could be a bargain, but there are some serious issues with going in with just Joao Pedro as your second striker. So there are questions around. I'm in a 3-5-2 with just Joao Pedro. Feels like a big risk. What are your thoughts? And is Joao Pedro nailed? If not, is he worth the risk that you're taking with the minutes? I think that he is as nailed as any other Brighton attacker outside of Mitoma. I still feel like Mitoma is the most nailed Brighton attacker, which is why he's so popular. I think for what it's worth, I would expect Joao Pedro to start in game week 1. From what we've seen in pre-season, he looks like first choice. But as I said, Brighton are now signing Kudus. They've got other options: Bruno, Welbeck, Ferguson, and Enciso, Mitoma, March, Pascal Gross, like I say, can play in the 10 role. Probably missed someone off there. They've got so many options that even if he is first choice, he will be rotated. And as soon as European competition comes in, he'll be rotated probably even more. On top of that, after game week 3, Brighton's fixtures are not very good. They have, I think, Newcastle in game week 4. Then they have some tricky fixtures in 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're looking at a player with a really short horizon of fixtures that are good. Probably a short horizon of how many starts he's going to get in a row as well. But he is 5.5 million. He has looked very good in pre-season. He is their record signing. And on top of that, he took a penalty with Pascal Gross on the pitch. So you would expect that when he's on the pitch, he could very well be on penalties. So I guess what I want to say is at 5.5 million, I guarantee he will be worth it. Is he okay to go in as your only other forward and to have to start him every week? So I've seen a few people, myself included, create drafts where if Joao Pedro doesn't play, you're looking at getting someone like Bulldog off the bench. That is maybe an issue. But what I would say around that as well is Joao Pedro will come off the bench. I don't think there are many games where he just won't feature at all. So you're probably not going to need your bench. But I guess I would predict him to get something similar to what we saw from Matoma last season. I would say that across the season, he'll probably get something like 2,400-ish minutes, average about 70-ish minutes per game. He'll start most games. He'll get 90 in a couple. He'll start the couple on the bench as well. But for 5.5 million, yes, I think he is going to be excellent value. I love that he's on pens. I think his data will be relatively strong for Brighton too. And I have no issues with picking him. In my latest draft, I don't know if I'll go in with this one. I've got Watkins, Joao Pedro, and Haaland as my front three. That feels a little bit safer because if someone like an Nkunku when he's back pops up, or Jesus comes back quicker, or Jackson looks good, or Darwin does look really good and you actually want him, then you've got Watkins to make that move. You're not stuck in a position where you can't go anywhere with Joao Pedro. I think the other option you have, which again one of my recent drafts has had, is you start with Joao Pedro and Haaland, but you keep like 2 million in the bank. So that if you want to go for a Wissy, you can. Or if Calvert-Lewin does look good, you can go there. Or if Darwin, you want to move to Darwin and he hasn't already risen in price, you can move there as well. I like that flexibility. I think just going in with a 3-5-2, a weak bench, and only Joao Pedro, yes, that is a bit of a risk. I would love to know down below, do you own Joao Pedro? For me, I think there's a good chance I do start with him, but I'm not going to make sure that my draft... I'm going to make sure that my draft isn't inflexible and completely reliant on Joao Pedro doing well. So I was asked a couple of questions around penalty takers in FPL, how much I value them, and if it is worth trying to get as many as you possibly can into your drafts. I do really value penalty takers, but my opinion on penalty takers is always that I would not try and get someone just because they're on penalties. But if I have a very close call, and I genuinely think it's a 50-50 between two players, I will tend to edge towards the penalty taker. So, for example, I think that Mbeumo is the best 6.5, if he's fit, of course. Let's ignore him. Eze and Matoma, for me, is a pretty close call. I think they are two equally good assets, but the fact that Eze is on penalties swings it in his favour. I think, for example, if you are genuinely 50-50 on Bruno and Rashford and you think they are equally good options, maybe go for Bruno because he does have pens. I've just, for a bit of fun here, built the best penalty taker draft that I can with as many as potentially 9 penalty takers. All 8 of the attackers are on penalties. And in the absence of Nkunku, there is a chance that Reece James takes penalties. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it gets asked in the press conference of Pochettino. Because if it does, if Reece James is on penalties, he'll come in for Chilwell for me immediately. But we don't know that. It could well be Sterling, Mudryk, it could be Jackson. We don't actually know. But Reece James could be. And then, like I said, all of the 8 attackers. We've got Morris on the bench of Luton, should be on penalties. We know Joao Pedro is recently taken one. We think he is. I would say Saka, Fernandes and Salah are nailed on to take penalties. And we also think that Eze and Mbeumo will too. So you've got potentially 9 penalty takers here. As I said, I wouldn't try and shoehorn them into your draft for the sake of it. This is a good draft, though. If you showed me this draft and didn't tell me that it was a penalty takers draft, I probably wouldn't realise and I'd go, yeah, that's a really strong draft. Then when you tell me that also you've got potentially 9 penalty takers, it's just extra routes to points. I know it's also extra routes to pain, and you will have your players miss penalties because players do miss penalties. I would rather have a player have the opportunity for a penalty than not. So I always feel like it's worth the extra pain, it's worth the missed penalties, because in general, most of the time, for most players, they will score more than they miss, and it's probably good to have them in your team. Let me know what I'd like you to do in your current draft. Count how many penalty takers you have. At the moment, in my latest draft, I've got either 4 or 5, depending which one I go with. I feel like it is a really nice amount. But if you can get as many as 7 or 8, you're going to be laughing. I thought what I would finish with is a Kane draft because it's been a very popular discussion at the moment. He recently scored 4 goals. Looks like he could be staying at Spurs and not moving to Bayern after Spurs rejected yet another bid from Bayern Munich. I didn't want to discuss it at the start of the video though, because if he moves before the Game Week 1 deadline, it becomes completely irrelevant in this section. I don't think for what it's worth, it looks like he will move before Game Week 1. And I honestly don't think it looks like he'll move at all. But if he does, it might be as late as sort of Game Week 2, maybe Game Week 3. So you could just start the season with him. And if he does leave, the thing is, you've got the most expensive strike or forward in the game. So you just sell him. It's not difficult to just move him onto an Ollie Watkins. Then all of a sudden you've got 4.5 million in the bank. So I don't mind starting the season with Kane at all. And I absolutely love this draft. It was very popular on Twitter and it was very popular on TikTok. Both of those posts absolutely blew up. People seem to like this draft that I built. I love it. You've got Onana, Estepinian, Chilwell, Gabriel. Really basic template back four there. 4 really strong midfielders. You've still got Rashford. You've still got Saka. You've got 2 £6.5 million midfielders. Here, just for the sake of it, I've chosen Eze and Diaby, but you can choose whoever you want there. You've got Haaland, you've got Kane, and you've got Joao Pedro. Plus, you've also got a £4.5 million defender on the bench too. If you downgrade Onana, you can even upgrade one of Kabore or Anderson as well and have an even stronger bench. So it's a really strong, balanced team. There are no places really that this is lacking for me, other than maybe just one more sort of mid-price midfielder. You don't have a Martinelli in there, you don't have a Bruno, you don't have a Maddison. You've got to have 2 6.5s and only 4 midfielders in total. But other than that, it's a strong draft. Is he essential if he stays? No, of course he's not. No player is essential in FPL. Even Erling Haaland. You can win FPL without having Erling Haaland. Absolutely, you could. You could go for Kane instead of Haaland, but is he one of the better options? Absolutely. He only finished 9 points, I believe, away from Erling Haaland last season. So, yeah, I love him as an option. If we know that he is staying before Game Week 1, I'll heavily consider it. For me at the moment, I'm just thinking I prefer the balance without, because what it essentially boils down to in a draft like this is Kane and Diaby, or Kane and Eze, versus Bruno and Watkins. And you can let me know down below what you prefer out of that. When I put it like that, because it really is as simple as that, that's the only real change, is you upgrade Watkins to Kane, and you downgrade Bruno to like a 6.5, and then you also need to find 2.5 elsewhere, so you maybe make 1 or 2 other little changes. But it generally does boil down to that. I prefer Bruno and Watkins. I feel like that is a much stronger combination, and for me, as a result, I'm just preferring the balance without Kane. But he's definitely very tempting, as is Salah. I just think at the moment, the likelihood is that I go with 1 premium in FPL for Game Week 1. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 1 preview. If you do appreciate these videos, because like I said, they take a while to do all of the research and the graphics, please do drop a like. We are aiming for 2,000 likes on this video. And also make sure to subscribe as well. If we are not yet at 80,000 subscribers, just hit that subscribe button. Completely free for you to do, but I massively appreciate it. And as I said, all of the stats that we've used throughout today's video are courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. So if you would like access for 50% off at the moment, for as little as £3 per month, you can get access via the link below, 50% off during pre-season. It is worth making the most of. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.